Technology permeates our daily lives. It is always important to think about what technology should do instead of what it can do. I'm Richard Koh, and welcome to our Tech 101 with our Technology Strategist. Hi everyone, welcome again to our Tech 101 with our Tech Strategist here at Microsoft. On today's episode, we have our guest Sidney, who is a tech strategist in our enterprise commercial sector. So welcome Sidney, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Richard.
And tell us a little bit more about what you do on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, on a day-to-day basis, I help customers to understand Microsoft technology. This is pertinent to help them to understand how they can use in the digital transformation journey.
That's great. I'm sure there's a lot of conversations that you have when you have these kind of discussions with them. And what I understand today, just before we came on the show, was that you want to bring the topic around digital twins. It's a very exciting space. So tell us a little bit more about Azure Digital Twins, please.
Sure, Richard. So the Azure Digital Twin is the Internet of Things platform that allows you to be able to create a digital representation of things, places, people, even business processes. Now, it actually helps you to be able to visualize better and understand how this information can be all interconnected in a twin graph, right? So relationships make more sense of how things are interrelated to each other. So I'll give you an example, right? If you think of a building will have floors, and the floors will have rooms, and rooms will have thermostat. And when you put in perspective, or even the people in it, humidity level is going up, the temperature is going up.
Right.
Do I feed back this information to adjust the temperature of the room? So that is an example of how a digital twin makes sense.
Okay. So there's almost like a digital feedback loop into the building management system so that it keeps the occupants inside the building happy with the right temperature.
That's right. So the Azure Digital Twin helps you to be able to optimize your products and look at how to improve your business process and also optimize costs, right? All in all, it also transforms the customer experience or the experience of the people in the building.
Right.
Now you take this into a larger sense that can be translated to even smart city.
Okay. So this is really at scale. So we're just not talking about building. We can be talking about even like city-sized type of digital twins as well that Azure Digital Twins can do. This is really fascinating. Now, I also learned from you just in talking to you that you have like a couple of demos for us in three different spaces. Tell us a little bit more about these three different areas that you're going to share with us today.
Sure. Yeah, I'm going to start off with the Azure Digital Twin Explorer and how you actually can upload a pre-created model into the system and how you actually interrelate this in a twin graph. So with that twin graph, you actually can run query on it to get the properties from the model itself. So for example, the temperature. So that's my first demo. And then the second demo is to help you to be able to understand how an end-to-end scenario happens. So that is creating a twin in the first place and feeding in data from an Iot Hub and drawing out the temperature data into the twin itself. And with that, we can also create an event trigger to actually update the temperature of the room, right? So that makes sense in a closed loop scenario.
Okay, so there's almost some level of autonomous behavior that can be enabled by this scenario.
That's right. It's a simple scenario, but if you think of a larger sense, you can actually have a lot of automation and also derive insights from what is happening in the building itself.
Okay. And I understand that Microsoft uses Azure Digital Twins to model our buildings, our campuses, our data centers. These are all infrastructure of a very large scale. So I'm sure Azure Digital Twins has the ability to do all of this at scale itself. What have you seen and observed so far?
That's right, which is why in the third part of my demo, I'm going to talk about how you can actually fast track the development on Azure Digital Twin Azure Digital Twin is a tool itself, but when you want to create an entire ontology of a system, for example, it could be energy grid, or it could be a smart city itself, you don't start from scratch. So you actually have open source community that you actually can look for the models that are already pre-built and start from there.
So this saves a lot of time in terms of like modeling a digital twin of, let's say, a very large city, or like you said, a very complex infrastructure like the energy grid itself. So I heard that you've got a demo for us. So shall we go see the demo?
Let's jump right in.
Okay, let's go.
In this demo, I'm going to show you how to create an Azure Digital Twins and connect it to an Twin Explorer. Make sure you assign owner role to yourself and go ahead to create it. When the deployment is done, go to the resource and you can see I can open the Digital Twin Explorer. From here, I can upload a pre-built model and I can also interact with the live environment of the digital twin. Here I want to upload a floor and a room JSON file, which is in the DTDL format. You can see the JSON file. And then I want to upload the twin graph to capture all the relationship and twin model itself. I can see a floor and a room, and let me click save to import it. Import is successful. Now from the twin graph, I can run a query to get a live environment and the relationship of the objects I have actually created in the digital twins. Here I can see the room 0 temperature 70, while room temperature of room 1 is 80. If I do a select temperature where it's more than 75, it will show room 1. And here if I go back to default, I can also interact with the data points stored in the model itself. For example, I can change it to 76 for room 0. And now if I query temperature more than 75, it's going to show me both room 1 and room 2. Now, in the normal way of operating with Azure Digital Twins, you use a client app to call the respective API. It takes in inputs like the Iot Hub or REST API, or even workflow from Logic apps, and you interact with the model using Azure Functions. From the model itself, it's a live model which you can read off the data for further processing, like even storing in the Azure Data Lake so that you can run analytics. So in this model, I'm going to show you an end-to-end implementation. First, you have a twin, and section B, you actually read in input from Iot Hub, and the third section is going to output into the event grid, where functions will then update the temperature of the room. With this link here, the end-to-end tutorial built out have all the source code files and step-by-step instruction of how you actually set it up. I've already set it up here, and here's where my resource group is showing all the resources for this project. In section A, you would have the digital twins. The twin graph represent a floor, room, and a thermostat in there. If I click on the thermostat, I can see the temperature captured by the thermostat. And when I click on the room temperature is also reflected in the model itself. In the setup, I've also created an Iot Hub to capture the simulated temperature from the thermostat. And to do that, we can use a device simulator to simulate temperature updating into the Iot Hub. I'm going to run the project, which is written already in C#. The temperature is simulating updating into the model itself. Through the Azure functions, you can see temperature is being updated and being refreshed into the thermostat. the room temperature remains unchanged here. The third part of this demo is with an event grid that is set up to have a functions to update the room temperature itself. So if I head on to my event grid, the trigger point is showing in the integration. You can see that the event grid trigger events process the function to output into the room temperature. Through the client app, you interact with the Digital Twins model using APIs. Here with the pre-built function, you can actually observe the properties of the thermostat, the temperature of the room 21 itself. You can see that event grid is triggering update into the room temperature. In the Digital Twin Explorer, and heading on to room temperature 21 and run the query, observe the temperature. Is being updated because of the event grid trigger. This is how you interact with an Azure Digital Twin end-to-end. Now you really don't have to start from scratch. The entire system is defined based on the Digital Twin Definition Language, DTDL, and on the open source you can actually find many ontology like the buildings, energy grid, and smart cities. If you head on to the Digital Twin Explorer, you can actually upload models that are downloaded from the open source community. For example, an anthology for the entire smart city, and start from there. Here, if you head on to the model graph, you can see the very complex predefined ontology, which you can then instantiate into a twin graph.
Wow, Sidney, that was a great demo itself. I think you show the ease of how a model can be imported into Azure Digital Twin itself. Now, tell us a little bit more. What should an application developer watch out for when they are doing this process of importing a model?
The entire Azure Digital Twin modeling is actually done in the language of DTDL, which is the Digital Twin Definition Language. It is an open standard, and with that, you can actually write in JSON notation for that, right? So typically, people don't do it manually when they do an import. They also create an application, could be typically a C# application to interact with the Digital Twin services. With that, you call the API to upload the model and create a twin graph right from the application itself. You actually use the all the Azure tools like Azure Functions to be able to interact with it and to update the model or to read the model into downstream processes. You can even hook it up to the storage or even the analytics like the Azure Synapse.
Hey, Sidney, so this is really cool. I mean, the construct of a digital twin itself. But tell us a little bit more. Why would customers or our partners want to create an Azure Digital Twin?
The most common use case is really to model the entire environment in something that actually makes sense, because it's actually a live connection that you can make into the digital twin model itself. This helps you to be able to optimize your business processes, but at the same time, it allows you to be able to understand how these are interrelated to all your backend systems. So you can link it to your CRM, or you can link it to your ERP or subsystems at the back end.
Right. And I remember just watching a video from our Azure CTO, Mark Rasinovich, a few days ago, where he talked about how Azure Digital Twins, they use it to also model things like potential failure of hardware, for example.
That's right.
So there's a lot of powerful use and scenarios that our customers can leverage Azure Digital Twins for. That's really great. So Sidney, Azure Digital Twins, really exciting. So tell me a little bit about some potential use case scenarios that our customers could potentially be looking at.
The Azure Digital Twin is definitely having a lot of potential in many, many industry segments. So I'm just going to call out two. So one is in the area of manufacturing. We know that manufacturing today has a lot of machineries that is all running in the factory. So these machineries are all connected to IoT devices, collecting data at all time, right?
That's right.
So making sense of all the machineries allows you to be able to run a predictive maintenance on the machinery and therefore reducing the downtime.
That's true.
And another environment would be possibly for the energy farms, for example, solar panels, where the systems are not so readily accessible.
That's true.
So one way is that you can always make sense of what is happening in the environment when you have collected all this data and linked them in a connected environment.
Okay, that's very cool. Those two scenarios are really, really very real. So if our audience that's watching us today want to learn more about this topic, where would they go?
Well, they can check out our link at Azure Digital Twin here.
Okay, very cool. Thank you, Sidney, and thank you for being on the show. Well, folks, this wraps up another episode of Tech 101 with our tech strategist. I hope you really enjoyed that. I think it's really fascinating. You should definitely go check that out. I'll see you at the next episode.